admit that sometimes the loudest voices for censorship have come not from within Europe, but from within my own country, where the prior administration threatened and bullied social media companies to censor so-called misinformation. Misinformation like, for example, the idea that coronavirus had likely leaked from a laboratory in China. Our own government encouraged private companies to silence people who dared to utter what turned out to be an obvious truth.
Vance talked about Romania again, and I get it. Imagine a country voting to have a conservative populist party, and the poobahs just say, yeah, no, we're not going to recognize that election because it went the wrong way.
And under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree. Now, we're at the point, of course, that the situation has gotten so bad that this December, Romania straight up canceled the results of a presidential election based on the flimsy suspicions of an intelligence agency and enormous pressure from its continental neighbors.
And then I think the most terrifying part of the conversation was when J.D. Vance talked about mass immigration to Europe.
And of all the pressing challenges that the nations represented here face, I believe there is nothing more urgent than mass migration. Today, almost 1 in 5 people living in this country moved here from abroad. That is, of course, an all-time high. It's a similar number, by the way, in the United States, also an all-time high. The number of immigrants who entered the EU from non-EU countries doubled between 2021 and 2022 alone, and of course it's gotten much higher since.
By the way, right before the Munich Security Conference started, an Islamic terrorist rammed his car into people on the streets. J.D. Vance talked about it. I don't think he said the word Islamic, although the terrorist did apparently holler Allah Akbar.
An asylum seeker, often a young man in his mid-20s, already known to police, rams a car into a crowd and shatters a community. How many times must we suffer these appalling setbacks before we change course and take our shared civilization in a new direction? No voter on this continent went to the ballot box to open the floodgates to millions of unvetted immigrants. But you know what they did vote for? In England, they voted for Brexit, and agree or disagree, they voted for it. And more all over Europe, they're voting for political leaders who promise to put an end to out-of-control migration.
There's a lighthearted moment. J.D. Vance was making a joke. I don't know if the joke didn't translate well or if everyone there was so sour because of what Vance had been saying. He talked about Greta Thunberg and Elon Musk and how having points of view, even if you find them irritating, that's not interference. It's just free speech. Take a look.
I believe that dismissing people, dismissing their concerns, or worse yet, shutting down media, shutting down elections, or shutting people out of the political process protects nothing. In fact, it is the most surefire way to destroy democracy. And speaking up and expressing opinions isn't election interference. Even when people express views outside your own country, and even when those people are very influential. And trust me, I say this with all humor, if American democracy can survive 10 years of Greta Thunberg scolding, you guys can survive a few months of Elon Musk. But what no democracy, American, German, or European, will survive is telling millions of voters that their thoughts and concerns, their aspirations, their pleas for relief are invalid or unworthy of even being considered.
Anyways, it was quite a speech. I've shown you probably about a third of it. And the reaction was immediate and exactly what you would expect. That loser who I think he used to be the president of the European Union or something, some big poobah, he was sacked because a few months ago, he threatened Elon Musk He said, you're going to interview Donald Trump on Twitter. You have to do this and this. And then if you're going to interview AFD, like this European bureaucrat was barking orders at Elon Musk about how he was allowed to talk to Donald Trump or the AFD, only if he followed certain rules. It was a lot of chutzpah, and it actually cost that bureaucrat his job, but not his Twitter account. So here's how this bureaucrat, I think his name was Thierry Breton, so he hates Twitter, but he can't get enough of Twitter. He said, "Welcome to Europe, VP JD Vance. With all due respect, in Europe, freedom of speech is a core value of our democracy. It is non-negotiable, never was and never will be. Proof? Even fake news are allowed, sadly, sometimes echoed by top U.S. officials." He goes on and on and on. It is absurd to say that free speech is non-negotiable in Europe. Free speech is constantly under attack in Europe. People are terrified by it. Even in the United Kingdom, there are thousands of arrests every year for Facebook posts. Anyways, if you think that was something, the German defense minister is some left-wing kook. And his response to JD Vance saying that free speech is under attack is to say, that is not acceptable. Take a look.
This is why I cannot just ignore what we heard before. I cannot not comment on the speech we heard by the US Vice President. We fight for your right to be against us. That is the motto, one of the mottos of the Bundeswehr, and it stands for our democracy. This democracy that was just called into question by the US Vice President, and not just the German democracy, but Europe as a whole. He spoke of the annulment of democracy, and if I understood him correctly, he compares the condition of Europe with the condition that prevails in some authoritarian regimes. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not acceptable.
I think you're sort of proving the point by saying it's unacceptable to say certain things. You have just sort of proved that free speech is under attack. And remember, the German chancellor himself said that the American point of view on Ukraine is a national emergency. You know what? I think that Donald Trump was sending a message to Europe, and I think most people got it, not these two, and loudmouths and a few others. But let me give you a few facts. Did you know that there are still 50,000 U.S. troops in Germany, still 40 U.S. bases in Germany? They never left in 1945. They never left Korea in 1953. They never left Japan. There are hundreds of bases around the world, but the German presence of the U.S. military is, I think it's the largest in the world, actually. It's a huge boost to the German economy, of course, having 50,000 people and all their material and equipment. But more to the point, it subsidizes their security while they beak off at America. And here's America, the one that pays the bill, saying, we'd like you to respect democracy a little more. We'd like you to respect free speech a little more. After all, we are the ones guaranteeing it. And the freak out by the left is quite something to see. I think Europe, I love it, of course, historically, culturally, linguistically. I think it's changing. Italy is losing its Italiness. Ireland is losing its Irishness. France is losing its Frenchness. This is all true. But it's also losing its energy. It's economically stagnating. It's deindustrializing itself in the name of Greta Thunberg's green theories. I think that JD Vance came to Europe to say, we're done with that, or at least anything that touches us. If you expect our support financially or militarily, you better stop, crushing democracy or free speech. And you better not lay a hand on American companies, including social media companies. I think it was the opposite message that Joe Biden has given for the last 4 years. I think you could call it America first. It'll be interesting to see if Europe embraces Europe first.